Metro Transit Police in DC are launching an internal investigation following surveillance of an officer using a taser on an unarmed black man. Now, this story by itself is pretty terrible, but there's an added layer of bad behavior when you consider the way ABC and World News Tonight specifically deceptively edited the video of the encounter. Now, we're going to show you the way they edited the video, and then we're going to show you the full context. Take a look.
So my name is Shamir. We're going to stay right here, and we're going to make sure that everybody's taken care of, okay? Hold on, whoa. He's all right. He's all right. Hold on, he's all right. Hey. Not necessary. Just get down. He's not even resistant. He's not even resistant. He's all right. He's down. How many tasers does it take to take down a grown man? He's down.
Now, the officers were responding to calls involving two minors who were allegedly threatening people with sticks. So they show up and they start investigating. And then there was a third man, a black man that got tased, who was asking questions as these two minors were being confronted by officials, right? Or not by officials, but by the cops. And so things escalated to the point where a third officer shows up and he starts tasing the black man, even though he was unarmed and even though his hands were up in the air. But if you looked at that ABC News World Tonight footage, you would think that the black man posed some sort of threat to the cops. Now let's take a look at the full context. And by the way, a hat tip to Jordan Yule, who posted about this on Twitter. Let's take a look.
So my name is Shamir. We're going to stay right here, and we're going to make sure that everybody's taken care of, okay? What I don't want is one of these colonizers trying to get on y'all about something, because then I'm going to have to go off, and I ain't got my nails done, all right? So we're going to calm down real quick. All right. Hold on, whoa. He's all right. Hold on, he's all right. Hey. Get the baby. Chill. Not necessary. Just get down. Yo, not necessary. That is not necessary. He's not even resistant. He is okay. Stop. Yo, I'm right here. Y'all need to stop. He's not even stop. Just lay down. Stop, babe. Stop. Stop. Yo, let him go. He's all right. He's down. He can't move. He's down. Leave him alone. He is down.
God damn, new riding the metro.
How many tasers does it take to take down a grown man? He's down.
The other hand.
So I'd argue that the full context is important because it tells a full story of what really went down. And there also seems to be some mixed messaging coming from the Metro Police in DC. Metro, according to NBC Washington, also said the third officer in the video used the taser because the man who had not been detained was interfering in the police investigation and, quote, exhibited behavior consistent with preparing to fight the officer.
I gotta jump in there. Okay, so there's no winning. You saw the video, he put his hands up. And so, but you're supposed to put your hands up with the cops. And they said the fact that he raised his hands was an indication that he was getting in a fighting posture. But wait, they tell you to raise your hands. So if your hands are down, like Philando Castile's was, you're gonna get shot and killed. If your hands are up, you're gonna get tased. So now, who did the guy push the officer, or did the officer push the guy? You just saw it. And was the guy's hands up? Yes, it was. And it wasn't enough, so he tased him. By the way, that guy took a taser like nobody's business. So
that's what upset the cop in the beginning, right? He tases him once, it didn't have an impact, and then he proceeds to tase him over and over again, to the point where the man is on the ground and he is unable to move, and they're still tasing him.
No, and this is the number one problem, which is that we teach our cops all across the country that you don't take anything from anybody, okay? You put them down. And so when you teach them to rage, and you teach them that no one is ever allowed to, quote unquote, disrespect you, and nobody's ever allowed to talk back to you, well, this is what results. This is what happens. You shouldn't be surprised. Stop being surprised. If you teach them to do something, they'll do it. So stop teaching them to constantly abuse civilians who question cops. They're supposed to be our cops. I know it sounds funny, right? Because they seem to mainly protect the rich, and obviously we've seen it over and over again. Another unarmed black guy, and then they turn around. They're always surprised that people are angry, like, oh, I guess people are upset about it. I mean, yeah, we know you've been doing it for decades, but now we can see with our own eyes.
So as I mentioned, at first, the Metro Police told NBC that the man had not been detained. And then later on, after this video, the full context goes viral, they put out a different statement. And I want to tell you what that statement says. After the subject disregarded warnings to move back, the officer deployed his department-issued taser and was able to take the man into custody. But wait a minute. At first, it said that he was not detained, right? That's what NBC Washington was told by this very department. So I don't get it. Why are they now saying that he had been detained?
And a police department in America would never lie. The police are angels. I mean, look, they asked juries, hey, if a cop is on the stand, he's more credible than the average citizen. Really, does anyone believe that anymore? I mean, it seems preposterous. And then they were surprised when OJ got off. I don't think he should have gotten off, but there was a jury pool that had seen for their entire lives African Americans in this country abused, lied about, beat upon, and framed over and over and over again. And back then there wasn't as much video. That was the beginning of video when we saw the Rodney King beatings, right? And whenever African Americans said, they're beating us up nonstop, people are like, oh, sure, yeah, right. Who are we supposed to believe? The entire African American community in the country, tens of millions of people, or a bunch of cops we paid to kick your ass? No, we're gonna believe the cops. So yeah, we're tired of it. We're tired of it. And when I say we, I mean all decent Americans.
Well, let me just say one thing. For the longest time, I thought that people would deny what was really going on with excessive force and brutality. And then I realized that no, they're not simply denying it. They know the truth. They know what's really happening. It's just that acknowledging what's really happening would, maybe lead to some changes, and they don't want changes, right? So what made me realize that is what's happening with children at the border right now. Children who are literally dying, 6 of them have died so far in Border Patrol custody because of the conditions that they're being kept in. So there's evidence of that now, there's no denying it, and people know. And so what has the right wing response been to that? So what? They don't care. They don't care. So they acknowledge what's happening, maybe not publicly, but they know what's really happening with police brutality. The thing is, they love it. They don't want it to change.
No, but there's an important caveat. Unless it's the Bundy Ranch people,
right?
It's right-wingers, it's white right-wingers. Oh, forget about it. How dare the cops point weapons at beloved white right-wing ranchers just because the right-wing ranchers pointed guns at them and threatened to murder all the cops. No, the cops should stand down. This is police abuse. It's police abuse when the cops look to protect themselves from right-wing extremists who are threatening to murder them. That's apparently police abuse. But kicking the living crap out of minorities year after year, decade after decade, not police abuse. Gee, I wonder if they're racially motivated. And then the great irony is they'll turn around and go, oh, you guys are making it about race. No, you were making it about race when you constantly attack minorities in this country and then give ridiculous, insane privilege to right-wingers who happen to be white. And then you say, well, I don't see race. All I see is white people that are right-wingers should all be protected, and the cops should bow down to them, and the government should bow down to them. But if it's a minority, the government has every right to kick them and beat them and do whatever they want to them. What you're doing is crystal clear. Little tiny extra piece of irony in this particular story. This happened at the metro stop of U Street, but it's also known as African American Civil War Memorial, Cardozo Station. So it doesn't matter. In Washington, D.C., African Americans are the majority. But somehow they get abused anyway, because that's what power does. And yes, it's about damn time we fought back. I don't mean physically, I mean legally and politically. We have to gain control so that cops wind up protecting and serving all of us and not just the rich and powerful.